wanting the president to actually follow through on his commitment to secure that southern border.
Will we see a solution before the first of the year? We're live in Washington. And Santa Claus is coming to town.
You know, I know him.
You do?
I do, yeah. We're tracking his every move as a very merry edition of Fox and Friends First on this Christmas Eve starts right now.
Hey
everybody, you're watching Fox and Friends First on this Monday morning, Christmas Eve. I am Todd Pyro.
And I'm Carly Shimkus, both in for Heather Childers. Thanks for starting your day with us. And let's get straight to it. The partial government shutdown is expected to stretch into the new year. Republicans are slamming Democrats, claiming they refuse to compromise on border security.
Jillian Turner live for us in Washington, D.C. with reaction from both sides of the aisle. Jillian, good morning.
Good morning, Todd. Are you okay?
I'm never going to do a Bruce Springsteen impression ever again. I'm going to stick to Bon Jovi.
If I didn't just check in on you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for that.
All right, you got it. So, guys, Capitol Hill has been buzzing all weekend long, despite the government shutdown. The president tweeting late last night from the White House. The most important way to stop gangs, drugs, human trafficking, and massive crime is at our southern border. We need border security, and as everyone knows, you can't have border security without a wall. The drones and technology are just bells and whistles. Safety for America. So now we know from Chuck Schumer's meeting with Vice President Pence Saturday, the president made a counteroffer somewhere between $1.3 billion. That's the number Democrats had considered earlier, and $5 billion, the White House's number. Sources did get specific with Fox News yesterday. They say the White House lowered their demands to $2.1 billion for the wall, plus $400 million for other security measures. Schumer's office, though, rejected that proposal. They issued a very succinct statement saying the vice president came in for a discussion and made an offer. Unfortunately, we're still very far apart. Some senators from the president's own party put the blame squarely with him.
Now the government is shut down over what ultimately is going to be $2 billion. This is a made-up fight so the president can look like he's fighting.
But Republicans question whether any number on the wall would satisfy Democrats right now. They believe Nancy Pelosi's calling the shots on this issue and say there's little incentive for her to get to a resolution before she takes her seat as the new Speaker of the House in January. So the outlook remains grim for the federal government.
I don't think things are going to move very quickly here for the next couple of days. It's very possible that this shutdown will go beyond the 28th and into the new Congress.
Congress returns Thursday, but there's increasing skepticism that they'll actually make any headway on this issue. Everyone in Washington believes the likelier scenario is this shutdown continues well into the new year and the new Congress. Guys.
All right, and coming up, we're going to be talking about another way the president may be able to secure some funding for the border wall. So thank you so much, Jillian, for laying that out for us.
You got it.
Thanks, Jillian. Thanks for your concern about my voice as well.
That makes one of us.
President Trump has been calling for a border wall since he launched his campaign back in 2015.
Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich points out Congress knew his demands and their inaction created the standoff.
President Trump in March was promised that this border wall funding would then be available at the end of the year. And here we are now, and he can't even get $5 billion after he'd been promised that you would never have to sign something again without it. If anybody is surprised that Donald Trump changed his mind at the last minute, you have been paying attention to how he operates. And when it comes to leverage, he's obviously using the government shutdown as leverage at a last minute when he knows if he doesn't get the border wall funding now, it's certainly not going to happen when there's a Democratic House, because they can't even negotiate with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer at this point in time to get $5 billion of fencing, which they have voted for before.
This current shutdown is the third one so far this year.
Defense Secretary James Mattis signing orders to pull all remaining troops out of Syria. This comes hours after the president announced Mattis will be out of the White House by the new year. Mattis originally planned to stay on through February. Now, he resigned after the president announced plans to withdraw 2,000 troops from Syria. Incoming acting chief of staff Mick Mulvaney now defending that move.
We recognize this fact is unpopular within the Defense Department. It's very popular with ordinary American people.
Do they really know what the stakes are of pulling U.S. troops out?
They elect the president so that he does, and he has the complete understanding of what you've just laid out, and the decision is his.
President Trump says Deputy Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan will become acting secretary January 1st. Adam Schiff warns that Democrats will subpoena the Russia probe report if President Trump tries to keep it a secret.
I'm prepared to make sure we do everything possible so that the public has the advantage of as much of the information as it can. But I do think that the special counsel ought to have the advantage of both the evidence that we've accumulated, but also the ability to prosecute those that have come before a committee and lied.
The incoming chairman of the House Intelligence Committee also says he wants the interview transcripts of senior advisor Jared Kushner and the president's son, Donald Trump Jr. He says that will determine their involvement with Russians during the 2016 campaign.
Is with you. Jeff Paul, Fox News.
Horrible situation there, a little bit closer to home. Extreme weather, the Northwest bracing for a winter mess this Christmas. Parts of the region already covered with snow are expected to see even more snow today. Take a look at this. Several states have winter weather alerts as that major storm moves in from the west, expected to bring rain and snow to the region through Wednesday, dumping as much as a foot of snow in some areas. It's then going to push over to the plains and upper Midwest after Christmas.
Oh, wow. Everybody stay safe on the roads because, of course, this is such a busy travel time. But messy weather will not stop Santa. NORAD will be tracking jolly old St. Nick this Christmas Eve as he delivers presents around the world.
1,500 volunteers keeping the 63-year-old tradition alive despite the government shutdown.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Speaking of incredible, First Lady Melania Trump joining the fun once again this year. She will be taking calls from children all evening long. We'll be keeping our eye on Santa throughout the morning. That's what I'm most excited for this whole show.
Right? Time now, 10 minutes after the hour. A Colorado mom missing since Thanksgiving. Her fiancé now under arrest. The brand new clues police just found hundreds of miles away.
And a shutdown solution not looking so good with neither President Trump nor Democrats willing to budge. So what will it take to make a deal? Our next guest was a staff director and counsel for the majority when the government shut down back in 1996. Why Robert Charles says there is a way to pay for the wall. The government shutdown now entering day 3 and could possibly extend into the new year.
So as Democrats continue to resist the president's demand to secure the border, what is it going to take for Congress to strike a deal?
Here now to weigh in is former Assistant Secretary of State under President George W. Bush, Robert Charles. Robert, thank you so much for waking up with us this morning. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right, so you have been there, done that. You were part of negotiations during the government shutdown in 1996, and you say that there is a way for the president to get what he wants, sort of bypass Democrats by transferring the money. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure. Let's just cut to the chase. This is all political theater right now being driven by Schumer and Pelosi. There are 3 obvious ways that you can fix this problem, and they're pretty straightforward. This is a $1 trillion bill that remains with the remaining 7 sort of digested bills. This $1 trillion of that number, $322 billion, is actually discretionary money, which means that there's no procedural bar to moving that money around. And I'll give you an example, just a quick upfront example. There's about $43.6 billion in there for HUD. Of that $43.6 billion, 11.9 of it is over the president's request. If you drop that back to $6.9 billion, you'd have your wall. There's $5 billion right there. The second big way you can solve this problem is that you can deobligate money. There are 137 federal agencies and departments, and when I got to the State Department, one of the things I realized is there's a dirty little secret, and the secret is that people park money. They obligate it, the bureaucrats obligate it, but they never liquidate it. If you literally put a dictate out to all 137 agencies and departments and said, give me all of your obligated but unliquidated money back, you'd be well over $5 billion. Finally, there's something called a top-level transfer, and that is if a federal bill, now the DHS bill and this big bill will have restrictions in it, but there are existing bills that already have become law, and if one of those bills allows you have extra money in one of those bills, and there are literally trillions of dollars in those bills, you can do a top-level transfer at OMB and ultimately move some of that money around. So This is all political theater. This is all designed to make every American think, gosh, $5 billion, that's a lot of money. The truth is that is a lot of money, but we are so far over that number right now. Literally next year, the overall payment on the debt, the interest on the debt, will be $390 billion. So think about that. $5 billion in the grand scheme with a $1 trillion bill sitting and waiting to be negotiated in the Senate is really not such a large number.
It would seem to me, Robert, that somebody in the White House, House, and Senate would know everything that you just said. So to your earlier point, this is really all just politics, and we're shutting down the government, literally depriving people of money, depriving people of work, depriving people of a good stock market and the like because of politics.
Well, let's go one step further and look at the reality. We keep saying shutting down the government. Actually, that's not accurate at all. We are probably furloughing several 100,000, maybe I heard the highest number was 800,000 federal employees. The average American will not even notice this. In fact, if it went on for weeks, they wouldn't notice it. What they will notice is if the border is not secured. And the other side of this, of course, is that all those furloughed employees will all be paid after the bill is finally signed.
Really quickly, I just want to ask you one more question. Has there ever been a scenario before where the government shuts down and then it is solved by the president transferring money? Has this happened before, or is this would this be new territory?
No, normally this is a political, it all stays in the political realm, and they battle over the bill that's on the table. And in this case, it's got, again, more than $300 billion in discretionary money that they can either shift around or add to. The House has already solved this problem. The Senate now just needs to solve the problem. The problem in the Senate is that they need 60 votes unless they use the nuclear option and pass it with 51.
And the nuclear option literally changes Washington, D.C. as we know it in a policy perspective. Robert Charles, thanks for getting up with us. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Time now, 18 minutes after the hour. He's making a list. And from what I've been told by my sources, he's checking it twice.
Your father, well, he's on the naughty list.
Santa Claus, though, is coming to town tonight. So which politicians are going to be waking up with coal in their stocking tomorrow morning? Beverly Hellberg has that list next.
Some migrants in the caravan now blasting the group that organized the trip, saying they downplayed the risks of the journey. Migrants say organizers encouraged them to keep going to the U.S. despite Mexico's offer to let them stay there. They also say they were misled about how long they would have to wait to apply for asylum in the U.S. Organizers say their commitment was first and foremost to protect the lives of migrants and give them as much information as possible. Thousands of migrants from Central America spent weeks making that journey to the southern border. The murder of a man at a New York bird sanctuary may have been carried out by MS-13 gang members. NYPD says the killing of Ian Cruz resembles initiation practices tied to the notorious gang. The victim was shot and stabbed to death, his body found in a state park. 5 people, including a 13-year-old girl and a 15-year-old boy, now facing charges. Carly?
Thanks, Todd. All right, well, he's made his list, and of course, he has checked it twice.
Your father, well, he's on the naughty list.
But not everyone made the naughty list this year. But which politicians are waking up to coal in their stocking tomorrow morning? Beverly Hallberg, president of District Media Group and the fellow at the Heritage Foundation, joins us now to break down the naughty and nice list coming out of Washington, D.C. Beverly, thank you for waking up with us this morning, and thank you also for playing Santa.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas Eve, actually.
Yes, that's right. Merry Christmas Eve. All right, so Maxine Waters, she was in the news a lot this year, and I'm sure many of our viewers at home will remember her saying this about the president's cabinet members.
If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome.
All right, right, so given that soundbite, I have a feeling I know which list she's going to go on. But take it away, naughty or nice for Maxine Waters.
Definitely the naughty list, because what you saw was really the year of the mob who were attacking people or trying to attack people in their own homes, trying to go into public restaurants and try to disturb individuals just trying to have dinner with their families. And it wasn't just extreme left grassroots organizations.
And you also say he gets a lump of coal in his stocking.
Yes, and he also made a lot of money because he wrote a tell-all book. I think he's one of the individuals, as well as other high-up members of the FBI, who are responsible for the credibility of the FBI being decreased very much so when it comes to the American public and the perception of the FBI. Here is someone who I think cared a lot more about his own personal perception by the American people, cared more about his popularity and money than he ever cared about the integrity of the FBI, and so I think he's definitely on the naughty list.
So we have 2 people on the naughty list right now. You're about to put hundreds more on that list all at once with Google, Facebook, and Twitter.
Where do we even begin with big tech? Big tech definitely was naughty this year, partially because of something we've known all along, which is when it comes to conservatives, they definitely censor conservatives, but even more so when it comes to the privacy of users' data. Only when you had Congress and other individuals calling them out were they forthcoming that, yes, they do sell your data to big companies and to outside players. So when it comes to security and privacy, you really can't be guaranteed that your data is remaining secure. So big tech definitely is naughty and gets a lump of coal. And I think next year, I think we're going to see more and more people questioning big tech and their practices.
I think you were absolutely right about that one. So let's shift over to the nice list and end on a high note here. The people affected by the California wildfires, I'm sure everyone can agree that they belong on that nice list.
Absolutely. And as someone who is from California myself, I actually have one who, because of how well she carries herself leading the UN as ambassador with such strength and also in defending our allies, she's been such a strong defender of Israel. And I think many Americans applaud her for that. But she's also someone who's been able to separate herself sometimes from the rhetoric of the president that we don't always like. She stands with him on the policies, but it has been able to set herself apart as someone who speaks differently on issues when not everybody is always crazy with the way that the president speaks about issues.
All right, we only have a few seconds here, but we got to get to this last one. It's not a person, it's a thing, but it's a thing that a lot of people benefited from, the GOP tax cuts.
Well, here's one thing we know is that Americans have on average about $1,000 more in their paycheck, so that means more presents under the tree for their kids or more presents that Santa can bring along. So I definitely think that's on the nice list. So the GOP tax cuts huge in 2018.
You know what, Beverly, I think you made that nice list as well.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for waking up with us this morning. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Merry Christmas. All right. Coming up, the media melting down over the partial government shutdown.
The word many mentioned around this city was actually meltdown.
Government shutdown, top officials quitting in protest, a plummeting stock market, and there's still a week of 2018 to go.
But 7 of the last 8 presidents have seen a shutdown. So why is this time any different? We debate that next. U.S. officials say they are doing everything they can to bring a Saudi citizen accused in a deadly hit and run back to America. Abdul Ramon Noura left the States last year, weeks before he was supposed to stand trial in the crash that killed a teenage girl in Oregon. The Oregonian newspaper reports U.S. Marshals now believe the Saudi government helped him escape. Officials say the kingdom got him an illegal passport and private jet to escape. Bringing him back will be a challenge. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia do not have an agreement on extradition. And new evidence in the search for a missing Colorado mom found some 700 miles away. Police in Twin Falls, Idaho won't say what they found, but officials have confirmed that a ping from Kelsey Barrett's cell phone was detected in the area 3 days after she was last seen on Thanksgiving Day. Police believe she is no longer alive. Her fiancé, Patrick Frazee, has been charged with her murder. And Mick Mulvaney is talking about his relationship with President Trump as he prepares to become his next chief of staff.
this. He knows that I've been fighting with him to fight for ordinary Americans for the last 2 years. He likes having me around, and I like working for him.
All right. Well, Mulvaney says the president's previous chiefs of staff struggled because of their lack of experience with him. Mulvaney will also remain in his current role as Director of Office and Management and Budget. And the Seattle Seahawks.
The partial government shutdown.
In a week when much of Washington talked about a shutdown, which came at midnight on Friday, the word many mentioned around this city was actually meltdown.
Who, you ask, is the Grinch, who is forcing hundreds of thousands of federal employees to either work without pay this holiday or be sent home?
The government shutdown, top officials quitting in protest, a plummeting stock market, and there's still a week of 2018 to go.
All right, but it has happened under 7 of the last 8 presidents. So why is this time any different? Here to debate it, Republican strategist Shondell Summer and Democratic political analyst Robert Patillo. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for being here. First question to you, Robert. Why is this time any different?
Well, we have to understand that this time the president's party has controlled the House, the Senate, the White House, the judiciary, and also this is the 3rd time in one calendar year that these things have happened. Usually when the president has control of all 3 branches, what we see is smooth sailing. That's when you push all of your legislative agenda through. It's almost your honeymoon period after getting elected where you can do your big controversial issues. However, what we've seen is a president who's been unable to reconcile with either House or Senate leadership to get things done for the nation. And this last shutdown being a completely unforced error where you had a complete agreement in the Senate, you had an agreement in the House, and the president threw a wrench in at the last second. That's why this is getting so much attention.
Shondell, how do you respond?
I think the president has a right to change his mind about policy at any given time. The border wall has been one of the platforms of his campaign since the beginning, and he was going to stick by it. That's what the American people want from President Trump. He's a different president. That's what's different about this particular shutdown.
Let's put the numbers up on the screen because shutdowns are not uncommon. They have happened, like I said, in 7 of the last 8 presidencies. You can take a look at the numbers on your screen. Reagan came in there with a whopping 8 there, but you see, those presidents had shutdowns. Shondell, do you think the mainstream media is just getting much ado about nothing fired up, or is there something else here that we are missing?
Well, the mainstream media has always had it out for President Trump. There's no doubt about that. He's been subject to more scrutiny than any other president in the past. With Obama, it was a love fest. With Clinton, it was a love fest. And those two had shutdowns that lasted more than 21 days for President Clinton and 16 days for President Obama. So those shutdowns were very serious. This time we've got a president who is going to stick by his insistence on a border wall. I think what you'll see is probably a situation where they compromise on some semantics. They will call it border security as opposed to a border wall and probably reach an agreement as to the amount of funding.
Robert, my question to you is, it seems that $5 billion to the 3 of us is a lot of money, but to the federal government really isn't that much. The president has expressed a desire for it. Isn't this the Democrats really just playing politics over what is in the scope of the federal budget, an infinitesimal amount?
Well, 2 points. One, Republicans forfeited their opportunity to discuss the border wall in 2013 when the House would not even take up the Schumer comprehensive immigration reform legislation that would have provided $18 billion for a border wall 5 years ago. Republicans were against it when it was something being proposed by the Democratic Party. Secondarily, let's understand that the president had the opportunity to compromise for $25 billion with Chuck and Nancy earlier this year and decided to shut down the government then. Tertiarily, let's understand Republicans have been the party of fiscal conservatism, of cutting the budget, of making sure that we keep the country's pockets in line, that we're not putting everything on the credit card. So now all of a sudden we just find $5 billion out of the ether that's just going to be paid for by our grandchildren. Let's get some intellectual consistency.
Well, we didn't come to a decision, a final solution here. I don't think they're going to come up with one today either in D.C. as well. But thank you, Shondell and Robert, for getting up with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay.
All right, a major health alert this morning. Is turkey on the table this Christmas? The brand new recall that's leaving hundreds of people sick.
Oof. And from a community coming together to support a little girl to a police department returning stolen decorations. The holidays tend to bring out the best in all of us. We've got the stories guaranteed to get you in the spirit.
Oh, I have all the feels already.
That's a little bit thanks to Buble, but mostly thanks to that beautiful story.
Take a look at the 5 and
Are you serious? Oh, you like that, Shimkus. Johnny Depp walking the plank after being officially dropped from the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise.
Alas, my children, this is the day you shall always remember as the day that you all know. Captain Jack Sparrow.
Disney producers say Depp will stop playing Captain Jack Sparrow after starring in 5 films over 14 years. Production chief telling The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "We want to bring in a new energy and vitality." Disney planning to reboot the series. No word on who may replace him, Carly.
Toddy, I think there's an opening that you may be able to fill.
I mean, when you think Captain Jack, you think Todd Patrick Pyro. I think it's clear.
All right, I love this next story. Gary Sinise bringing some Christmas cheer to Gold Star families. The actor bringing hundreds of family members to Disney World through his foundation's Snowball Express program earlier this month. Sinise says it's all about bringing smiles to kids who need it the most.
It's heartwarming because it's fun to, it makes you feel good to see the kids laughing and having a fun time. But it's also heartbreaking because you know why they're there.
Yeah.
You know, they're there because of loss and grief and because they are a military family who's paid the ultimate price.
Well, Sinise first partnered with Snowball Express in 2007. His foundation officially partnered with them last year.
I don't know anybody who does as much as Gary Sinise.
He is an incredible person, absolutely.
Christmas spirit on full display outside our New York studio. Beautiful shot
Look
there.
at that. That is very nice. But the holiday cheer is stretching all across the nation, of course, and Fox's Jane Metzler gives us a look.
Even a government shutdown is not enough to stop NORAD from keeping tabs on Santa's whereabouts. The agency says it will still be monitoring his movements on Christmas Eve. Santa got a big send-off in Finland, with people braving sub-zero temperatures to wish him well as he prepares for his worldwide journey. Here in the U.S., people in the town of Slidell, Louisiana, also came together to make a memorable Christmas for a little girl with leukemia. A local effort to buy the family some gifts took off, and soon residents from all over the area were pitching in.
This is way more than we ever expected.
Santa did come early to homeowners in one Dallas metro neighborhood, helping police return Christmas decorations that were recently stolen off their properties.
This is the greatest part of the job, even at something as minor as this.
Randy Heiss of Arizona found part of a balloon near the Mexico border with a note attached, written in Spanish. Turns out it was a little girl's Christmas wish list. He managed to contact the family and decided to buy them almost everything on that list. In California, residents of the town of Paradise are still recovering from November's devastating Camp Wildfire, but officials refuse to let them miss out on Christmas, giving fire victims a holiday-themed night of music, treats, a tree lighting, and even some ice skating. Jane Metzler, Fox News.
Well, today isn't just Christmas Eve, it's also a day to celebrate a favorite holiday treat. It is National Eggnog Day. Todd, do you like eggnog?
I love eggnog, Carly Shimkus.
I've never had it before, I don't think so.
Historians believe the drink originated in medieval England, but only became popular during the holidays in colonial America in the 1700s.
Americans consume more than 130 million gallons of eggnog a year. Wow, I've successfully gotten away from all that. It's called eggnog. Why would you want it?
It's thick, man. It's thick. You can't really drink that much, but clearly America.
Cheers, though.
Congratulations.
National Eggnog Day. The time now is 46 minutes after the hour. The Grinch isn't the only thing that's green this Christmas. Why the holiday is going to pot.
And if you haven't finished shopping by now, you're not in good shape.
I'm not.
But fear not. We have the last minute gifts to cross everyone off your list.
Evening, everyone. Welcome to The Next Revolution. I'm Steve Hilton, and this is the home of positive populism. We have a fantastic show for you tonight, a bit of an early Christmas present for you. We have your favorite Next Revolutionaries all in one show for the whole hour. We'll be talking about what you can expect from the new Congress in 2019, the future of the populist movement, which Democrats could be presidential candidates in 2020, and much more. Plus, one of my favorite swamp watchers of the year. Here's a hint. It involves the Clintons. So, here they are, Tammy Bruce, Lisa Booth, and Teslin Figaro. And later, maybe even we'll have an appearance from Greg Gutfeld. But first, it may not have been a blue wave, but it's certainly a new wave. With all the Republican retirements, as well as the Democrats' gains, it's one of the biggest freshman classes Congress has ever seen. You've got young activists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a huge number of veterans, including Republican Dan Crenshaw, who inspired us all with his gracious response to that Saturday Night Live attack on him, and many newly elected members who've never worked in politics before. So, could this lead to more bipartisan action so Congress actually gets things done for you? Or will it be obstruction and gridlock all the way? Here to discuss, Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, former Bernie Sanders national staffer Teslin Figaro, and Fox News contributor and president of Independent Women's Voice, Tammy Bruce. What fun, by the way, to have all of you together, all on one show. I'm so excited about it. Let's start with you, Lisa, on this, what we can expect next year. You know the DC scene very well. It's never one thing or another. It's always a balance. But I just want you to try and put a percentage on it. What percentage of what happens do you think is going to be constructive work that helps the American people versus obstruction and efforts just to take down President Trump?
Well, you're right, Steve. I've spent a lot of time working on Capitol Hill. Sadly, I wish I had better news because it is almost Christmas, but I would say probably about 10%. I think Congress is largely just going to do the basic functioning of government, keeping the government open, debt ceiling increases, things of that nature. I don't think there's going to be a lot of constructive work from a bipartisan manner, unfortunately. And I think, look, Nancy Pelosi is going to be feeling a lot of pressure both from her caucus in regarding a growing progressive caucus. I think that's going to present trouble for her. You also have, even with her trying to get the speaker's gavel, more moderate members also opposing her. They're the ones that signed that letter saying they would not support her. That's going to be a trouble spot for her as well. And Democrats have already signaled that what they're expecting is investigation after investigation. You have Jerry Nadler saying that President Trump could be impeached over the latest information we found out with Cohen regarding the payments and potential campaign finance violations. You have an Adam Schiff, House Intel. It's going to be Russia, Russia, Russia. So I think President Trump's got a lot of political minefields ahead of him, unfortunately.
God, you're really cheering us up with that.
I know, I'm sorry. I wish I had. I got to be honest. I wish I had better news. I'm sorry.
Of course. Of course. Now, Tammy, look, there's one way of looking at this. I mean, perhaps from a sort of philosophically more conservative point of view is, it's not the end of the world if Congress doesn't do a lot of things. Sometimes, we want government not to do very much and just to sort of get out of the way. Would that be a silver lining in terms of what we might be expecting next year?
Yeah, that's why, I always wonder why everyone panics when there's a threat to shut down the government. A lot of us maybe would really like that to happen for a while, with some certain basic things that would continue to work. But look, we have a government for a reason and some very specific things. They ruined our healthcare system. And the Republicans did not step up to repeal and replace the dynamic that was happening. They've picked apart pieces of it. So clearly healthcare was a big issue in 2018. It's going to be a big issue in 2020. So Americans want solutions in a limited way. We want issues regarding, of course, national security, the border, healthcare, and the economy. It's a very, very basic dynamic. We want to be able to be free to live our lives. That said, this notion of what Democrats are going to be able to do, I think this argument that there's going to be this internecine fight in the Democrats is a very important point. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has got ideas that are not going to be accepted by the establishment. Nancy Pelosi is going to be Speaker because she raises money, but arguably there's no leader of the party. And so it's going to be, if it's going to be that directionless, this is going to be an opportunity for the president. He does well with a foil. He clearly is a negotiator. My worry is because he is persuadable, we might see things coming out that some conservatives might not like, but we've got to get certain things covered. Now, the Democrats, and I'll end with this, Steve, don't want solutions, I argue. Tesla will probably disagree. They feel that they won in 2018 because of problems. That is what they feel that they're the best at, of exploiting problems. So I don't see the Democrats going out of their way to solve problems. I think they will be obstructionist, and I think that will not bode well for them in 2020.
Just before I go to Tesla and Tammy, I'm really interested in the point you made about the kind of risks of, if you like, too much cooperation between the president and Nancy Pelosi in the wrong areas. Just give me one or two examples of what you might be worrying about in that area.
Yeah, well, I think that in some ways, I think when it comes to health care, is this notion of any kind of framework of moving more toward what's called single payer, which is nationalized health care. We really have to stay focused on the importance of the private sector, of freedom of choice, of Americans being able to choose what works best for them. And when government gets involved in anything of these kinds of things, it makes it worse, of course. And so Democrats, any compromise with the Democrats means more government. And the president has to stand against that. And he's the president because Americans don't want that. We want solutions, but we want it to be solutions that work. And the Democrats, after 8 years of Obama, certainly proved that the democratic solutions to things are not what we want.
All right. So, Teslin, how do you see the sort of battle within the Democrats then in Congress with all those new members, particularly Ocasio-Cortez, always held up as the example, but there's more behind her in that same spirit. How's that going to shape up?
Well, I think, first of all, we'll see more of the real representatives of D.C., starring Trump, Pelosi, and Schumer. We'll see more of that reality show on TV. I absolutely love the transparency. I hope we see more of it. I think Trump will be pushing a lot of that. But to be quite honest with you, I actually do agree with Tammy. I mean, and maybe not because Democrats don't want to see solutions, but I think they're going to take a page from the Republicans' book. When Barack Obama was elected, they said they wanted to make sure he was a one-term president, and I think people feel the same way about President Trump. Unfortunately, both parties will be interested in who will secure the White House in 2020. So to me, it will be just a big show of individuals trying to shore up the base. Trump is going to make sure that he keeps transparency to let his base know where his position is. Democrats are still going to, try to get their positioning. But the unfortunate thing about Democrats is even though they talk a good game like Republicans, they really don't hold the line. So they probably will bend on a couple of things, which is all that bending